Well, hey there, mom friend. It's Karen Haley here, the digestive coach for moms, and today I want to talk to you about a taboo subject. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag on this one subject where if you're a mom with gut struggles, I know it's really affecting your life. Gut struggles like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, IBS, and certainly celiac. It's something that we all deal with. But sometimes it's confusing and we might not want to admit we don't really understand what this word has to do with. What is it? It has to do with the word gluten. Yes, gluten. And if you haven't been living under a rock for the last 5 years, I know you've heard this word. You've heard it when you've gone to the grocery store because there's the gluten-free aisle. And you've seen it when you're at a restaurant because there's gluten-free menus. You've heard it's good for you. You've heard it's bad for you. But here's what I want you to do for right now. I want you to just leave those choices. Yes, I want to do it. No, I don't want to do it. Leave those choices behind just for a minute. Because until we really understand what that word gluten means, until we really get that, how can we really make a choice on whether we want to eat it or not? And what makes this word and this idea of gluten all the more complicated is that we have we're getting bombarded with all these different sources. There's the media, there's your doctors, there's friends, there's books that you're reading, there's of course the internet, and all of these places are telling you different things about gluten, whether it's good for you or bad for you, and then there's these really technical definitions. And so it's really hard to understand even what it is. And you may have even seen this. I think it was on a sketch. I want to say it's one of the late night show hosts. I think it's Jimmy Kimmel. So you could probably Google Jimmy Kimmel gluten. It's really funny. He does a sketch where he takes to the streets and he asks people in California, what is gluten? Well, first of all, he says, are you gluten free? And then after that, he says, what is gluten? And so all of these people, of course, right, they want to be healthy. They say, yes, of course I'm gluten-free. And then when the question comes, well, what's gluten? I think maybe only one person out of all of the people that he asked, I think only one person actually knew what gluten was. And so since gluten has been around for so long, we're actually afraid to admit we don't really understand exactly what it is. Well, today, it's just you and me. There's nobody else around, and I'm not going to tell anybody that this word is confusing for you. I just want today's video to be about getting really clear on exactly what gluten is so that you can make a choice. Do you want it in your life or do you want to ditch it? And so like I said before, this conversation is just between you and I. There's nobody else around, and so before this video is done, you're really going to get to know gluten inside and out, a really simple, easy to understand definition, not any of the complicated ones you may have heard before, but you're gonna really get it, the ins and outs, and just really simply what gluten is. But before we get to that, just in case you've never seen any of my videos before, let's get to know each other a little bit better. My name, like I said, is Karen Haley. I'm the digestive coach for moms, and that means that I help moms that are struggling with gut issues like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, celiac, and IBS, and I help them when they're ready to move beyond medicine and start to heal in a more natural way. And we use methods like food, lifestyle, talking about things like stress management and time management, and we also talk about mindset. It's huge, mindset, your motivation and where your mind is at and how your mind can actually help you heal. So we use those kind of methods to help when you're ready to heal from your gut struggles. And this is very near and dear to my heart, and I'm very passionate about this because I know what it's like to have gut struggles. For 30 years, I've had Crohn's disease, and about 8 years ago, I was able to quiet my Crohn's symptoms using some of those same methods, using food, lifestyle, and mindset. And that experience was so profound after living in, and I know if you have IBD, you know what I'm talking about, after living in hell, multiple medications, surgeries, fatigue, just really feeling awful. I did that for 20 years. I definitely don't want you to go down that path for that long. And there's no reason that you need to. I was able to quiet those symptoms, and it definitely made me passionate about helping others. So now let's get back to that word we're talking about today, gluten. Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question. I wonder if you've heard this definition before. Gluten is a protein found in grains like wheat, barley, and rye. That sounds simple enough, right? And I bet you probably have even heard that definition before. Now, I thought that definition made sense. I thought it was simple enough until a few years ago when a client said to me, well, Karen, that's all well and good, but what the heck is a grain? And I thought, whoa, I need to take a step back here. Maybe this definition isn't as clear-cut and it isn't as understanding as I thought it was. And I think that's definitely true because since I had that experience with my client, I've had several more friends and clients who've said to me, well, I don't really get the protein part and what exactly is a grain. So this is definitely out there. And right, we heard about that Jimmy Kimmel sketch where people don't know what it is. So it's definitely out there and people just don't want to say, I don't really know what gluten is. And so I really want to today, I really want to break this down so that then when we really understand what gluten is, we can make that choice. Yes, I want to keep it in my life, or no, I would like to ditch the gluten. So let's start by really breaking this down. Gluten is a protein found in wheat. So there's that word protein. And what comes to your mind when you hear that word protein? Well, protein, along with fat and carbohydrates, those are the building blocks in the food that we eat, and they're really important for energy and vitality in our life. They're part of all of our foods, and protein is one of those parts. And if you're thinking about, when you think about protein, if you're thinking about meat like chicken or beef, or you're thinking about fish or eggs, you're definitely on that right protein track, right? Those are all foods that are high in protein. But protein is not just found in those foods. Protein is also found in grains. And that's where that word grains comes in. And to understand exactly what a grain is, I want us to just take a minute and I want you to close your eyes. We're going to do just a little bit of imagery here. Use our imagination to picture this. Okay, are your eyes closed? Can you picture this with me? So I want you to pretend that you are in a big farm country. Maybe you're out in Iowa, let's say, but you're looking at a farm. And on that farm, there's tall crops. And at the top of those crops, they have large feathery stalks. And the sun is beating down on them, and those crops are swaying back and forth in the breeze. Can you picture that? Okay, you can go ahead and open your eyes now. If you can picture that, you've just been picturing a grain. Those are grains. Those tall crops with the feathery stalks at the top, and they're swaying in the breeze, and the sun is beating down on those. That's what a grain is. And when we make grain products in the United States, we take off that top stalk, we refine it, we process it, and it becomes flour. That grain becomes flour, and that flour is the flour we use to make many of the things that we like to eat, like pizza and pasta and cake and cookies and bread and donuts, right? The list could go on and on. But that's where grains come from. They come from a crop that then gets refined and turned into flour, and those are the grains we eat. Now, some grains contain gluten and some grains don't. And it's not that the gluten was ever just removed from there. They just never had gluten in the first place. Grains that contain gluten are grains like wheat and barley and rye. Some grains that don't ever contain gluten at all are grains like millet and amaranth and quinoa. Those are grains that don't have gluten in them. I really want you to be able to make this choice for yourself when you go to the store to decide if you want to have something with gluten or not. So I created a little cheat sheet, and that's a freebie for you today for watching this video. You can click the link below this video and you'll get access to my top 10 grains that have gluten and top 10 grains that don't. So just go down below this video and click the link and you can have access to that cheat sheet for free. And then you can be able to go to the grocery store and choose gluten-free foods or not gluten-free foods with confidence. So now that we've put all this information together, all this information about gluten, does this make more sense? We had the protein part of gluten, and we talked about protein being one of the major building blocks in the food that we eat. We talked about those crops with the stalks at the top that are swaying in the breeze, and that's the grain part. And then what gluten is it's the protein found in those grains. So I hope that that definition, that more simple, down-to-earth definition, I hope that that makes sense for you, and I hope that has helped you understand ins and outs of gluten. So now you have a choice. Now it's actually decision time. Now you get to decide. Now that you really understand gluten, do you want it to be a part of your life or not? And I have to give my personal opinion on this, and my personal opinion is that gluten does not need to be a part of your life. And the research backs me up here. Many moms with gut struggles will find that when they remove gluten from their diet, their symptoms get better. It's definitely a benefit. They just feel better. And I haven't just seen this in the research. I've seen it with friends, I've seen it with clients, I've seen it with family members, people that are struggling with gut issues like Crohn's or colitis, celiac, of course, or IBD, or I'm sorry, not IBD, IBS. You know, symptoms like that, those gut struggles, you can really find benefit when you remove gluten from your diet. So you don't have to take my word for it. You can try this for yourself. And here's what I would recommend. If you want to try this out just to see how it works for you, give yourself about 30 days to 3 months and just remove gluten and see how you feel. And then you can really decide, do you want to make this a lifelong decision? And if you choose to do it, I don't want you to go halfway with it, right? I don't want you to say, okay, I'll eat gluten-free at home, and then when I'm out at a restaurant, I'll just eat whatever, because it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. You really have to commit to it. In order to know if gluten is a factor in your life, you gotta commit to it. So commit to that 30 days to 3 months of no gluten whatsoever, and then you can decide if it was a good choice for you or not. Now, one last thing before we finish our time together, and if you're a mom, you've probably been multitasking during this video, and I know because I'm the queen multitasker myself, but if you are multitasking, I want you to come back to me and I want you to hear this last part, because it's the most important part. If you don't hear anything else from this video, I want you to definitely hear this last part, and here it is. Crappy food is crappy food. It doesn't matter whether it has gluten in it or not. Just because you remove the gluten from a product, it doesn't make it healthy. Chips, cookies, breads, cakes, all of these things, they're just unhealthy, whether they have gluten in them or not. So don't be fooled when you see the word gluten-free. It doesn't necessarily mean healthy. It just means gluten-free, right? Crappy food is crappy food. Okay, so now if you're gonna be trying this out and you wanna avoid the crappy gluten food and you wanna do it in a really healthful way, how can you do that? Well, I'm gonna give you 3 tips so that when you go to the grocery store, you can make sure that you're not only eating gluten-free, but you're doing it in a healthy way. So here's tip number 1. I want you to choose whole, real food, whole fruits, whole vegetables, meat that hasn't been marinated, just plain meat, plain fish, and then you can put the seasonings on that you know are gluten-free when you get home. So choose whole ingredients, whole foods, fruits, vegetables, and meats and fish. That's number 1. Number 2 is buy foods that are naturally gluten-free. There's a lot of foods out there that never contain gluten in the first place, and if you want to be gluten-free, it's easy to buy those foods that are naturally gluten-free. And last tip, and definitely the most important one, tip number 3, is stay away from the gluten-free aisle. Yes, I said it. Stay away from the gluten-free aisle. That's where you're gonna find those crappy foods, those chips and cake and cookies and pretzels and all of those things that just really aren't that healthy in the first place. Remember, there's foods that are naturally gluten-free, there's the whole fruits and vegetables and meats and fish. You don't even really need the gluten-free aisle. So, I hope that this video was helpful for you. And if you have a mom friend that's also struggling with gut issues, I hope you'll consider passing this video on to her so that we can all benefit from this gluten-free information. I want to thank you so much for watching, but before we go, don't forget, click the link right below this video and you can get that top 10 list, the top 10 foods that contain gluten. I want to say that one more time because that's not right. The top 10 grains that contain gluten and the top 10 grains that don't. You can get that list for free today if you just click the link below this video. And if you want to get more information, I have other videos on how to heal naturally with gut struggles. So head on over to my website. That's KarenHaley.com. And my mom had to be just a little bit different and spell my name with a Y. So it's KarenHaley.com. Thanks again. Thanks so much for watching this video today. And until next time, I'm going to wish you much gut love and happiness always. Bye for now. IBS. It's that